Welcome back to 101 East. This week we come to you from Indonesia's Aceh province, right in front of the Baitur Rahman Mosque, and we are discussing the issue of Sharia law here in Indonesia. Gentlemen, do you really think that implementing Sharia law would help to stem the degradation of morals here in Indonesia? This is why you're calling for stricter Sharia criminal laws.
Of course, I do agree very much for that, because that is our belief. If you implement what God's guidance to us, then there will be beneficial for the populations.
So you think that implementing the punishment of stoning, caning, lashing would actually stop people from committing robbery, adultery, homosexuality? Do you really think that those sort of punishments would stop people making?
That's what I like to express here, that in Sharia law, you have to understand that, for example, for stealing, maybe your image will be on the cutting off hand, but to Islamic law, it is actually the ultimate sentence, punishment. But it can be lesser than that.
But do you think that the Sharia criminal law will help stem the tide of moral degradation in Indonesia?
I'm not sure, because I'm not sure. If I'm a Muslim, and then I abide to follow Islamic law. So I have to be morally, better than any other actually. But you are asking whether if the state, apply Islamic, let's say criminal law, will that eradicate, the number or the rate of criminal or the I'm not sure about that, because I don't believe in that things.
You don't think it will happen?
No.
I must ask you though, Sharia law, Sharia criminal law is linked to punishment like stoning, caning, lashing. Do you think this sort of punishment would work in this day and age when people are certainly more aware, more educated, and certainly are more aware of the humane practices of punishment?
Yes, what we call as humane practices sometimes depend on what we perceive about right or wrong. In Muslim society, we perceive that...
So you think stoning is humane?
Well, why not? Sometimes I give you an example, hanging people, or even now the discussion on killing. Is that humane to kill? So death penalty for the criminal in killing. But you understand that still in debate. What you perceive as modern or not, it depends on what you perceive, what is right and wrong. So in another country, for someone hanging people is damn, but to my opinion, it's still acceptable.
I agree to some extent with what he said, because it doesn't have anything to do with the old form of law, with the old form of punishment. I mean, if you go to Singapore, caning is still there. If you against the law of gravity, and then you will be canned and you will be flogged for a number of times. But the question is not actually, this is the problem is actually where the Indonesian state, put Islam within their own context. This is a unitary state that we are supposed to be governed under the same law. But if you apply, the criminal law, and this criminal law is applicable only for Muslim and others, what if I steal? If the law says that if you are Muslim and if you steal something, you have to cut, your hand to be chopped off. What about the non-Muslim being put in jail for 6 months? This is not fair, I think.
That's a question I want to put to you. Does this mean that Sharia law only adheres to Muslims, or does it mean that non-Muslims will also have to follow it? What you are calling for then is for Indonesia to become an Islamic country, an Islamic state.
It is not necessary.
But this is what you're saying. If you adopt Sharia law, if you adopt Sharia...
for everybody, meaning that Indonesia becomes a state. Now, like with regard to the marriage law, the Islamic Sharia on marriage law and divorce and inheritance, that's applicable only for Muslim. And yet, actually, it's voluntary. I mean, even if you are Muslim and you are not satisfied enough with the kind of arrangement, then you always can go to the public law. So this is what I said, that actually what is happening here at the national level, not in Aceh, at the national level, is actually the partial accommodation of Islamic law into the state law, But as long as the law deals only with the private and family matters, that will be fine. when it deals with the criminal law, and then it will polarize the country. Even the Muslims, some Muslims themselves, maybe not Pak Fuad, but even for some Muslims themselves, resent that kind of law, especially if you are having the kind of legal mechanism which is not strong enough, which is not so impartial enough, and which is not so objective enough. You know that Indonesia, with regard to the legal aspect, is still becoming a soft state. No matter what kind of law you are applying, let alone the Islamic law.
Well, Fuad, I must ask you, do you think a majority of Indonesians, we're not just talking about Aceh here, but do you think a majority of Indonesians would welcome Islamic law being implemented across the country?
I still believe there is a trend for such perceptions. As you mentioned before, that it's getting more and more region in Indonesia, adopting the Islamic law in the, what do you call this, in regional codes.
But if you look at the recent elections, Islamic parties declined in their support. What does that say,
That's another phenomenon. That's another phenomenon.
No,
in what way? How different is that?
Discordant phenomenon. This is discordant phenomenon. Even in Aceh, 96% of the people voted for the Democratic Party, which is belong to the President SBY, and not the Islamic Party. And do you think the Partai Demokrat, the Democrat Party of Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, will support the Islamic law? I don't think so. I mean, if you think in a linear way, if what Pak Fuad said is right, that there is a growing tendency to apply for Islamic law, then I think the electoral strength of a number of Islamic parties will go. That's not the case in the 2009 general election. The Islamic Party's electoral strength was down,
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to wrap up this discussion. Just finally, out of the 52 Muslim majority countries in the world, stoning is legal and sanctioned in Afghanistan, in Iran, Pakistan, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, parts of Nigeria and parts of Somalia. Will Indonesia join this list?
It depends on the people in Indonesia. When the people of Indonesia realize that Islamic principles are supposed to be practiced in the national operation, then to my opinion it is possible that Indonesia will adopt the Islamic law as the criminal code of Indonesia that will be applied for everybody in Indonesia. And it does not necessarily mean that Indonesia is an Islamic state.
If you ask me, then the answer will be no. No criminal law will ever be adopted nationally. Only family and private law. Look at even in Aceh itself, it has the authority to be administered based on Islamic law, and yet when the regional parliament passed the law on adultery, stoning, for the adulterers, or flogging the non-married adulterers, it is being put on hold by the governor themselves, the sole executor of any policies designed for Aceh. So I don't believe that kind of law will be ever implemented.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, and that's where we're going to have to leave it there. That's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. From the team here in Indonesia, Aceh, thank you very much for joining us.